Hola amigos y amigas, ¿cómo están? Con motivo del festival STARMUS que va a ocurrir en la isla de La Palma entre los días 25 y 29 del mes de abril del año 2025, subo esta entrevista que pude hacer durante el STARMUS de Bratislava, que además fue un verdadero honor participar y estar allí, pero en particular hablar con esta persona. Se trata de Charles Duke, uno de los tripulantes del programa Apolo, que además tuvo la suerte de caminar por la Luna, es decir, he podido compartir y hablar con una de las pocas personas vivas que puede decir que caminó por nuestro satélite. ¿No es verdaderamente increíble? Pues espero que disfruten y aprovechen esta entrevista de 1 hora en la que tuve el privilegio de hablar con una persona tan importante y que tiene una historia de vida tan interesante que compartir. Así que ahí tienen 1 hora hablando con un auténtico astronauta que ha pisado nuestro satélite. So, Mr. Duke, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you.
Thank you. Good to be with you today.
Yeah, great. I learned about your story and it's impressive. And first of all, I would like to know what is the thing that you most like in life, like piloting or.
What is the thing I most like in life?
Yeah.
I think it's my family and my as far as sporting goes, golf and hunting. And then I enjoy my grandchildren, and I have a deep relationship with God. So I have a full life.
And when you were a kid, did you dream of going to space?
There wasn't a space program when I was a kid. When I was about teenager, 15 or so, I began to think about flying airplanes. It was the beginning of the space age. And the airplanes were up there making these long contrails. And I looked up, I said, that'd be really nice to make a contrail. So that stimulated my aviation desire. I went to the Naval Academy, and I got to the Naval Academy. I realized you could go into aviation, into the Air Force from the Naval Academy. And so my senior year, I decided I wanted to fly. And my choice was the Air Force. Back then, you could go into the Air Force from the Naval Academy. So I did, and I had a full career as pilot and astronaut, test pilot.
And from test pilot to rockets, how was this change?
Well, test piloting, you're more in control, and so you have to, test flying is precise. It's not just loops and spins and stuff. It's holding an altitude within 2 meters and within 1 kilometer mile per hour. And so it's very precise. And so you learn to control the airplane very, very carefully. And so I enjoyed that. And then when I got selected as an astronaut. Of course, we flew airplanes, and we were training in the simulators. And the lunar module simulator was you could fly it manually, and it's more like flying a helicopter than it was an airplane. And so, because in a lunar module, you could go up, down, turn it around, forward, back, and it was easy to fly. And so we had been trained as a helicopter pilot at NASA, and so I took to it, and it was very exciting being able to fly the lunar module.
And soon after you started the program, you became like heroes, you astronauts of Apollo. How was dealing with all this pressure and the media and the people?
Well, I got selected in 1966, and my first real assignment was on Apollo 10 as support crew. And that led me into mission control as we called it Capcom. You speak to the crew, and that was on Apollo 10. And they simulated a landing, but their spacecraft couldn't land. But they went down and back up again. And so except for the landing, Apollo 10 was a rehearsal for Apollo 11, first chance. And so I was then put on Capcom for Apollo 11, which was very exciting. You know, first time we were going to try to land on the moon. And so during that descent, we had the communication problems. We had computer problems. We had trajectory problems, and which led to fuel problems. And so it was a very, very tense 12 minutes, believe me. But Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were very competent. Mission Control was very competent. And they landed about 17 seconds before we were going to call an abort in Mission Control. So tension was high, and but when they landed, it was a lot of cheering and excitement.
Yeah, I imagine. A lot of pressure as well, I imagine. And then you went to the moon with Apollo 16?
16. Yeah. I was back up on Apollo 13, and when they had the explosion on the way to the moon, John Young and Mattingly and I got in the Mission Control, and we spent 35 hours in Mission Control nonstop, working to get them back safely. New procedures, how to use the lunar module, how to save the lunar module for 4 days. It was built for 2 guys for 3 days. Now we got 3 guys for 4 days. How do you make it last? You know, oxygen and water and all electrical power. So it was a big effort to get them back, but it was successful thanks to Mission Control.
Was it like the movie?
The movie was really good, I thought, yeah, except they portrayed Jack Swigert, the command module pilot, as sort of incompetent, but he wasn't. It was just a drama that they put into the movie. So it was, I enjoyed the movie, and I told Tom Hanks after it was over, we saw a special screening. I said, Tom, it's a great movie. I said, I knew how it was going to come out, and I was sitting on the edge of my seat, so excited about it. So.
And then it was the time to go to the moon, and you walk on the moon. Mm-hmm. So how was the whole program from the?
Well, the first, Apollo 16, we were to be the first landing in the mountains of the moon. It's called the Lunar Highlands. And they had picked out a landing spot for us, and we studied the maps and felt like we could land within the plane of the Cayley plain. And so when we made our maneuver so you could see the lunar surface for the first time, we were at altitude about 3,000 meters, and no, not that high, about 2,000 meters. And we saw all of this landing area, but in our photographs, we had photographs that you could not see objects less than 10 meters across. And so that was, and when we looked down, we saw a lot more craters than we expected. Smaller than 10 meters, 12 meters. And so we had to maneuver. I was talking him down, and he was maneuvering to find a place to land. And so as we got closer, he picked out a place, and we started down like a helicopter. And at about 15 meters, we were blowing moon dust everywhere from the rocket engine as the exhaust hit the moon. And at about 2 meters above the moon, there's an electrical probe below the landing gear that when it hits the moon, it closes the circuit and says contact, and you have a little light comes on in the cockpit. And when that light comes on, you shut the engine down and you drop in the last 2 meters or so. Boy, we hit the ground, and we were 6 hours late landing. We had due to some problems, and so John, he did a great job. He picked out a spot that was level, and so we just erupted with excitement and enthusiasm. We're on the moon. We're on the moon finally. So it was a big relief because we almost aborted due to a problem in the other spacecraft. But Mission Control figured it out, and they saved the day. Really, Mission Control was invaluable for Apollo. Every mission had something go wrong that they were able to overcome.
Any moment of fear, probably in the launch, or?
I didn't have any fear. No, not. We felt right. Once we landed, I had disappointment. For 6 hours, we didn't know whether we were going to land or not. And so that was disappointing, to train 2 years and be within 5 kilometers of your landing spot, and they say, come home. So you can imagine how we felt. Just very disheartened, but not fear. It was just disappointment. And so then they gave us a go for landing, and boy, our spirits came up, and now we got a chance, So we landed, and as I said, it was 6 hours behind schedule, but we hit the landing spot. And that was exciting. We just erupted with joy and excitement, hollering and screaming. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but we're on the moon.
You were the youngest.
Yeah, well, later on I did a little jump, that was a moment of fear when I fell over backwards. That's the only time in the whole mission.
How do you feel walking on the moon? Was it different as you expected?
Down on Earth with all of my equipment on, I weighed 160 kilos. Up on the moon, I weighed 25, about 30 kilos, 25, 30 kilos. So you had this ability to bounce, but it was easy to lose your balance. Your backpack weighs more, as much as I did, so you have to walk bent over so your center of gravity is between your feet, over your feet. And we got used to that. But if you straightened up quickly, you tended to fall over backwards. And towards the end of our stay, we were going to do what we thought would be fun, do the Moon Olympics. The Olympics were in Munich in 1972, that summer. So we were going to have the Moon Olympics and do the high jump. So when I started to bounce to jump, and I jumped, I straightened up. And when I did, I went over backwards. And I was about 1.5 meters off the moon. And that was scary. Because if the life support system breaks, I'm dead. And so the fear comes, but fear is not a bad emotion if you don't panic. And if you keep your senses, thought occurred to me, roll right. So as I was going over backwards, I rolled to the right and broke my fall on my right side, right hand and leg, bounced onto my back, but I'm on my back, but I'm still alive. And so my heart was pounding, but I realized that, hey, everything's going to be okay. Because the pressure was good in the suit. You could hear the pumps running in the backpack. And so I was okay. My commander came over, and John looked down, gave me stern, not a warning, but a stern lecture. That wasn't very smart. And I said, yeah, you're right. Help me up. And so I think we set the high jump record for the moon.
I know. And did faith play any role in these moments of fear or?
No, I don't think so. I think we just had a very solid equipment. The life support system, the suit was very strong. the pressure suit, or spacesuit, whatever you want to call it. And these were custom-made suits. And we would go to the manufacturer, and as they were building our suits, when we got where we could test the pressure, they put you on the ground, lay you on the ground, and a guy came up with a big hammer and starts pounding on the suit. And the hammer just bounces off. So you get a lot of confidence that this suit is really strong, and it's going to take a big impact to destroy the pressure in this suit. So you have a lot of confidence in your suit, and even though it takes rough usage, it survives, and you survive.
And do you have any image that was the most, the one that made the most impact on your life? Any view or any moment? A picture, a photogram?
It wasn't a view. It wasn't the moon was an adventure for me. It wasn't a spiritual experience. It wasn't a philosophical experience. It was just an adventure. Where we landed on the moon, the Earth was directly overhead. So in your spacesuit, you look up and you're looking at the top of your helmet. You can't, so you rarely see the Earth from where we landed. By grabbing hold of the car and bending back, you could look up and you could see it. But we didn't do that very much because it took some effort and wasted time. It's going to be there. So it was always above, never moved. The Earth never moves in relation to the moon. And so there it was up above. And when I fell down, it was right out in front of me, of course, and I could see it. But it was an adventure to me. It wasn't a spiritual experience or philosophical. It was just, I was on an adventure and I was having fun. It was beautiful. It was exciting, wonder, all of those kind of emotions that one has from being in that situation. It kept saying, nobody's ever been here before. Nobody's ever touched this spot before.
Wow.
In all the history of humanity. So that was a unique thought and experience, but it wasn't spiritual. Later on, I had an encounter with God that was 6 years later. 1978. Yeah, 6 years later. But it had nothing to do with being on the moon. It was just problems that my wife and I were having, and our marriage was in trouble, and she was on the verge of suicide, and in 1975 it was. 3 years, a little over 3 years after we went to the moon. And some people came to our church and they shared the power of Jesus to change a life. And she realized she tried everything but Jesus. And so she said, Jesus, come into my life. And when she said, over the next 3 months, I watched her change from sadness to joy. It was an amazing change. And her suicide thoughts left. And so 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I had a similar experience. And that put us together, putting God first in our life, held us together as a couple. And now, next month will be 61 years we've been married.
Congratulations. And a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And how this trip changed philosophically your view of the humanity? Did it have an impact, the trip to the moon, impact you from the philosophical view and spiritual view?
It wasn't, like I said, it was an adventure to me, an exciting adventure. It wasn't life-changing as I expected. I don't know anybody that really had a great philosophical impact that moonwalks did. It was more we were adventurers. We were test pilots, and so we used to risk, and so you were there to do your job, and you focus more on doing your job. And the beauty of it, that you just absorbed all of that, and I say the wonder of it all, and that it was an emotional experience for me, but it wasn't life changing. Is what I'm trying to say. And I mean, just I'm on. You couldn't get over. I'm on the moon. And you recognize the major features in our landing area. To the south was Stone Mountain, and to the west to the north was we call Smoky Mountains, and craters that we were going to visit. So you felt right at home because you'd study these pictures for 2 years, and say, okay, I'm going to go on the second excursion. I'm going to go right here, and we did. And so hey, let's go there, John. And I had the maps. He drove the car, and so it was a tremendous sense of belonging, I guess, because we studied the landing area, and we knew we'd had all these experiments to do that we practiced, and let's get to work. Yeah, and it was a job, but very exciting.
Was it were you upset when the projects of the moon were cut off in the 70s? How did you expect to evolve the space exploration during these 50 years?
Oh, yeah.
Are you upset about this?
Yeah. Well, while we were on the moon, Mission Control told us that our Congress had approved the space shuttle program. And so they canceled the last 3. Apollo was so successful, they canceled the last 3 missions. And they put all the money that was going to go to that onto Space Shuttle. Mm-hmm. And Space Shuttle flew from 1981 to 2015 or whatever it was. And then so all the money in the NASA budget for flight operations was on Space Shuttle, so no more moon flights. And then we went from Space Shuttle to building the space station, which is still up there. Mm-hmm. And so for the last 50 years, they haven't had any money to basically go back to the moon. But now we do. Shuttle's retired. Artemis is coming along. Probably another 2 years. If everything goes well, we'll be on our way to the moon again with Artemis. And very complex mission, but very exploratory, a lot more science than we did at Apollo. And it's a lot more complicated mission. And it'll be the beginning, I think, in the next century, in the next decade, of a permanent base on the moon. And we'll be able to learn how to mine and extract the minerals from the moon. And I think we'll have a permanent moon base, people there all the time, but not the same people. You cycle crews back and forth. Mm-hmm. Similar to Antarctica. If you know anything, Antarctica's got a base, and people down there all the time. And a very hostile environment in Antarctica, but they survive. And the same on the moon. So I think we'll have a permanent moon base eventually as we build it slowly, if all works well. I'm optimistic, and I think that we're going to end up having in the next 5 years, let me put it this way, I think we'll have people back on the moon.
On Mars?
Oh, Mars. I'm not a big proponent of sending people to Mars. It's a very complicated mission. It's very difficult to plan. Once you leave Earth orbit on the way to Mars, there's no help except advice from Mission Control. Hey, this thing just broke. Well, it's too bad, you know. If you don't have a spare on board, you don't get it fixed. Plus the radiation, and I'm not sure it seems like we've had people up in space now a year and in near Earth orbit, but the isolation going to Mars, I think, is going to be difficult to overcome. And I see AI and robotics is so good now. Yeah. Maybe we don't need to send people, but I think the humans, on the other hand, the human spirit is to go explore. You know, it's been there forever. Is what's over the next hill? You know, let's go see this. And but planning a trip to Mars is who's on the crew? Do you have a doctor? Do you perform surgery? How do you protect the crew from radiation for 6 months out? And just a lot of planning and has to go into this to have a successful mission. And I think it probably be done. And I think that NASA does want to send people to the moon eventually, but at my age, I'm probably not going to see that. I'll be dead. But the sense of exploration in the heart of humanity is, let's go see what's over next hill. So we'll probably do it. I don't think it's a good idea, but that's just my opinion.
But would you go in the case? I mean,
well, if I were younger, I'd probably say yes. But now that I think about it, there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of ways that you're going to have to modify spacecraft and protection from solar radiation and crew selection, stuff like that. So it's a lot of planning to go in a mission to Mars. You know, minimum year, 6 months there, a month in orbit, maybe a month, 6 months back. So you're talking about all that radiation exposure and stuff like that. So, but the human spirit is to explore. So we'll probably do it. I just don't think it's with robotics and AI now that has got so good. Maybe we don't need to expose humans to that risk, but that doesn't satisfy the desire to explore, I guess.
And finally, about Elon Musk. How are your feelings? Do you think it's good for space?
I think I've never met Elon Musk, but I like his company. SpaceX is fantastic. When NASA first announced that they were going to hire these private companies to do this and that and the other, I thought, why are we doing that? I wasn't for it. But then I see now, and I quickly changed my mind, because they're so good. SpaceX and Blue Origin, they make decisions quickly, and they've accomplished everything that NASA's asked for them under their contracts, and it's been a lot less expensive than it would be if NASA's big bureaucracy tried to do what they're doing. And so I'm all for it now. I think it was a great idea of NASA to hire these companies. And NASA never built anything. We had all of our programs from Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Space Shuttle. NASA said, we have this requirement. We need a spacecraft that can do this. And so they sent out the proposals to these big companies that said, you want to bid on this? And some did, and some got the contract. The difference is with SpaceX and Blue Origin, they came to NASA and said, hey, this is what we got. You want to buy? And they said, yeah, we'll buy that. And so they gave them some money and a contract, and that got them going. And they've been very successful, especially SpaceX. And So it didn't take me long to change my mind and see the advantage of what NASA's doing, using them and their spacecraft and all. Artemis is a little bit different. We've got a spacecraft like Apollo called Orion, and that's been around for 20 years now, but it hasn't flown to the moon yet. And then the descent stages and the lander is either going to be built by SpaceX or Blue Origin. I think they're going to have both of them are going to build a spacecraft, and then NASA will choose which one.
Mhm.
Right now, the only one I've seen is the one SpaceX built, and it's almost 30 meters tall. It's a huge spacecraft. And the whole thing lands and the whole thing lifts off again. And and eventually that'll be the beginning of what I call would be a space base, a community up there. You build a place for the crew to live, and you have a little car that comes up remotely and motors over to where you are, where you start learning how to maybe extract water, if there is water, extract water from the rocks and stuff. So it's going to be a major science project. And then the technical side of it, just landing at the South Pole is going to be difficult because it's very rough down there and very deep shadows. And I don't think you'll be able to see into the shadow. It's so deep. But the changes as the sun moves around, it never gets above 2 or 3 degrees above the horizon. So its temperatures are not extreme. It's that extreme as what we experienced up on the equator. And so there's a lot of advantages going down there, but it's also rougher and a lot of steep hills and stuff like that. So surely they'll pick out some place that they think they can land safely.
And how does it compare modern times with previous time? I mean, now everything is like automatization.
It's going to be different. Yeah, we had manual control, and when we landed on Apollo, everybody was flying it manually, and they have we had switches and controllers and stuff. They're going to be punching buttons, but they will have some control over it, I think. And they have landing radars like we had. They give them altitude, and I think they have the cameras. They have big visual cues, but they're not necessarily looking out a window. They're looking at a camera view on a screen, I think. But I could be wrong. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, about the difficulties of Artemis, and hopefully in 3 or 4 years we'll be back to the moon with people.
Will be great. And just last question: how do you deal with the conspiracies about humans not going to the moon?
Well, the evidence is overwhelming that we went to the moon. If you faked a landing on the moon, why would you fake it 6 times? Just fake it once and shut up. But now we did 6 times, 6 landings. The Russians, we were in a race with the Russians, and they never challenged the success of Apollo, not once. So they knew we did it. And it's obvious looking at the photographs that were taken 20 years later by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Every Apollo flight has been photographed, and you can see the descent stage. The last 3 missions, you can see the car. You can see the experiments package. You can see how the soil turns dark when you walk on it and turn it up. It goes from light gray to very dark gray. All that's visible on 6 landing sites. And so the evidence, you're just willfully ignorant if you don't believe that we landed on it.
And you left a picture, right, on the moon?
I left my family picture, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Didn't last very long.
Yeah, man.
The temperature was about 115 centigrade at that point. And so when I dropped that little picture on the front, it started curling up right away.
But you were like thinking what you wanted to live there. It was like a, you thinking in
I had
advance.
permission. Our boys were 5 and 7 and at the time. And we trained in Florida, but every family lived in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So we were gone all the time. And so to get the boys excited about it, I said, you guys want to go to the moon with Dad? Oh, yeah, Dad, we'd love to go. So I said, well, we'll take a picture of the family. So we took a picture of the family in our backyard. And I got permission to take it and leave it on the moon. And so one of the last acts I did, I reached in, we have a pocket here on our suit. I reached in with his picture and I dropped the picture and fortunately, it landed right side up. And so I took a picture of the picture and it, as I said, it began to curl up on the sides because it was encased in plastic, but at that temperature, it's not going to last very long.
Mm-hmm.
So after, for instance, the flags, they think probably everything is, after 50 years, everything is bleached out. And so there's no color left on the flags, and I'm sure my picture's going to be just a little black ball. I can tell you where I left it, but
the picture of the picture is still there.
I got a picture of the picture.
Well, thank you very much, Charles.
Y gracias a STARMUS, gracias a Karik y a Breso. Pues esto ha sido todo, espero que les haya gustado mucho este vídeo.